Hello and welcome to the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast. It is August 25th, 2024. This is episode 262. Stand-up comedian, actor, and improviser Paul Green, sharing my journey as I pursue my dreams as a comedian and sharing whatever insights and experiences and wisdom or lack thereof that I have gained along this journey. If you're just joining me, I have been talking the last couple episodes about why I started doing this podcast in the first place amongst so many millions and millions. I think I read somewhere that like 5 million new podcasts get started a year or something. It's just unbelievable. And of course, with technology and everything, it is just so incredibly easy to start a podcast. So starting the podcast was one thing, and I talked a lot about that again yesterday on my episode yesterday, just about how it was an opportunity for me to confront a very major fear of mine, and a fear that I felt was holding me back and keeping me from really achieving the dreams that I was purporting to be going for. And the second element is just me trying to prove to myself that I can do something consistently, do something daily for an extended period of time, because that's always been difficult for me to do. So there's a whole other element about this podcast, which is really important to me and really significant to my journey. And that is this whole idea of going for dreams. And I've talked about this throughout the podcast, but I feel like I haven't really dove into that element of my journey, and it is so incredibly significant. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about how I became a dreamer and what that even really means, because it's such an interesting term to even call it a dream, because I don't know, it's just one of those idiosyncratic terms. I feel that we say it, we know what we mean when we say it, but it also kind of doesn't really make sense, because dreams are actually a real thing, right? Dreams are the imaginative scenarios that play out when we are sleeping. And it's so interesting that there is this other meaning for the word dream, which we all know what we mean when we say it in context. Go live your dreams, the girl of your dreams, the house of your dreams, the job of your dreams, your dream career, your dream vacation, your dream car, your dream house, your dream boat, right? And it's kind of interesting that those two definitions, or that the word dream serves both of those definitions, because, you know, what happens when you are asleep is very different than what we mean when we say go for your dreams. So it is, to me, interesting that that is the term, that we use the term dream for both of those human experiences. So in terms of that other definition of dream, meaning dream as in going for that thing in your life, or getting that thing in your life that you really want, or that you really desire, or that you feel would make your life look or feel a certain way. And that term, or that particular meaning of the word dreams, really took a significantly different, or just a more significant meaning in my personal life about 10 years ago. Because the reality was, or is, that my entire life I was not a dreamer. meaning, and of course I mean dreams in the terms of really going for something big in your life or pursuing something that seems unlikely or seems unreasonable, but is still desirable. And reality is I spent almost the first 3.5 decades of my life really just sort of existing and just taking what came to me and never really thinking or believing that life could be amazing, or at least not for me. It's amazing lives are what happened to a few other lucky people, but not for me. What's that old jazz song? They're writing songs of love, but not for me. And I really did have a pretty bleak outlook on how I actually believed my life would pan out. It was almost like I expected to be disappointed. Like I was always just living life waiting for the shoe to drop, the other shoe to drop, and prove to me that life doesn't ever go well. And it wasn't that there were things that I wanted to happen that I thought would be really cool. I just never actually thought that they would happen to me. And that was the story that I told myself. And that was the belief that I had. I don't know why I had that belief, but I don't know. I'll have to get a lot of therapy to figure that one out, but or a lot more therapy. I've had plenty. So that didn't really shift for me until about 10 years ago. And what happened 10 years ago? At that point, we're talking about 2014, I had started doing stand-up comedy. I was brand new at stand-up. And I had been doing improv comedy, like Whose Line Is It Anyway style comedy, for about 6 or 7 years. And I knew I was a good improviser. I didn't think I was great at stand-up, but I felt it was a skill that maybe I could develop. I was living in Arizona. I was a realtor, not a super successful one, but you know, I was eking by as a realtor. And gosh, the story could be so much longer, and I don't want it to get too long, so I'm going to just gloss over some details here. Ultimately, what ends up happening is I have this epiphany that I need to stop being a realtor and that I need to get a full-time job because I needed some stability in my life. My life was a little too chaotic. And I had a handful of friends who were working at this software company that used to be called Infusionsoft. And all of my friends talked about what an amazing company this was and what an incredible culture they had. And I was so hesitant to go get this job because I had never really worked in corporate America before. And I was so worried about having a 9-to-5. But there was something in me that also said, Paul, a 9-to-5 would be really good for you at this period in your life. So I end up applying for Infusionsoft and I get hired into the company. Now, this company at the time had this really incredible culture where they were all about investing in their employees in really cool ways. And one of the mottos of the company was, we believe in people and their dreams. They had like 7 mottos. I don't remember the other ones. One of them was like, we help small businesses succeed, and we do what we say we'll do. Just stuff like that, right? It was kind of the tenets that their company lived by. But we believe in people and their dreams, again, was one of these tenets. So as part of this company's staff was a full-time dream manager. Yes, that's what I said. They actually had on staff a man whose position and title was "We believe in people and their dreams." And his name is Dan Ralphs. And I actually interviewed Dan Ralphs on this podcast. You can look back in the history of my podcasts and find the episode where I talked to Dan Ralphs. We're still friends to this day. He's just a remarkable man. And so he was really a glorified life coach on staff, like on salary. This is how much this company believed in supporting people in their dreams. So one day I make an appointment with Dan Ralphs. I'm going like, oh, going for dreams. That's new. I've never really done that before. What does that mean? Well, I don't even know what my dream is. That's interesting. So I make an appointment with him and we sit down and we just start talking. And then he asks me a very simple question. He goes, well, actually, it wasn't a simple question. It was a question that nobody ever asked quite in this way. And he, in essence, I probably won't get it word for word, but he, in essence, said, what is something that you would like to experience or have happen in your life that seems so cool, but that you just don't ever think could happen for you? Something like that. And nobody had ever asked me that question before. And yet when he asked the question, this answer just came to me. And it was, I want to be on a sitcom. I want to act on a sitcom. And in my mind at that time, I was thinking about The Office. And I had never, ever in my lifetime, ever said anything like that out loud. And when I said it to him, I immediately anticipated that he would shut it down. Oh, well, sure, but every actor or every comedian wants to be on a sitcom. That's just, I just meant something more reasonable or whatever. Like at that time in my life, it was like I was just so trained for whatever reason to just automatically assume that anything that sounds amazing, but maybe isn't necessarily common, I guess. Common is probably not the right word, but how many actors move to LA and want to get on a sitcom and go there and fail, right? So I'm now stating something that to me seems very, I'll just say it, batshit crazy. But that's what I said, and it was just in my heart, and I don't know why I had never said that out loud, but it was just something that I always thought would be so cool. And I had been watching comedy television ever since an elementary school kid. I remember watching Saturday Night Live. I remember watching whatever sitcoms were popular back then when I was a kid. Home Improvement, Roseanne, what's the one I'm thinking of? I never really got into Friends when it was super popular. Oh, Seinfeld. Loved Seinfeld. And then, of course, when The Office came out, loved The Office. Big Bang Theory. All of these sitcoms. And I said SNL, but I need to say SNL again. I loved Saturday Night Live and all of these comedic actors, right? And there was something in me that wanted to do that. And I remember even an elementary school kid, I would show up to school and I would impersonate all of the characters that were on SNL that weekend. I would do Hans and Franz and like, yeah, come on, Hans, let's do it. Yeah, I want to pop you up. And I would do, Phil Hartman and motivational speaker and all of the Mike Myers skits and Wayne's World and all of this stuff. Yet, even though that had called to me ever since I was a kid, I never in a million years believed that I would be able to have those types of experiences. So here I am in 2014 at this new company. I'm sitting across from a dream manager, and I say this out loud for the first time in my life. I was probably 33, 34 years old. And as soon as I said that, again, I expected the negativity. I expected the pragmatism. I expected him to tell me all of the reasons why that's probably not going to happen and how hard it's going to be and how so many people fail and blah, 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 blah. And Dan didn't do any of that. He just went, oh, great, that's really cool. And I just remember thinking, wait a minute. Why isn't he shutting me down? Why isn't he telling me all of the reasons this is dumb? And then he just started asking me these very simple questions. He just goes, so what would need to happen for you to be able to get on a sitcom? And then I was just like, oh, well, I guess I would need to move to LA. He goes, great. So what would it take to move to LA? It's like, oh, well, I would need to, find a place to live. I would need to find out how expensive it is, how to take care of myself. Cool. So what would it take for you to get those answers? It was, instead of him just shutting me down, it was him just starting to break this dream down to what is the next practical step that I could take towards this dream. And I'll skip a ton of details because, again, I could tell this story and make it last 4 hours long. After it took about 6, maybe 7 months after that conversation I had with Dan Rouse, I think it was actually early 2015 by this point, next thing I knew, I was packing my bags, threw everything I owned into a U-Haul. Not everything. I threw about a third of what I owned into a U-Haul, and I gave away and threw away everything else. Because the apartment I was moving into was about a third of the size of the place I was living in and cost about 3 times as much. And I drove to Los Angeles and started pursuing my Hollywood dream of getting on a sitcom. And, of course, all of the ups and downs have happened. By the way, I have been on sitcoms. Never got on like a major network sitcom, but I have done some indie sitcoms. I've done tons of like student films. I've done plays. I've done Shakespeare. I did stand-up comedy on some of the most iconic stages in Hollywood. I've been on the main stage at the Comedy Store, which is the flagship comedy club in Los Angeles. That's where Jim Carrey performed, and David Letterman, and Jay Leno, and Eddie Murphy, and Robin Williams, and name any stand-up comedian who you know by name has performed on the main stage in Hollywood, California, and so have I. And although, my dream is taking all of these ups and downs and twists and turns, that experience of at least going for it and saying, there's this thing in my heart. I don't know why it's there. I don't even know if it's going to happen. It's pretty audacious, but I'm going to go for it anyway and just see what happens. And that experience alone has brought more fulfillment and more meaning and more joy and more experiences, both heartbreaking and incredible, than anything else that had ever happened in my life to that point, and still. And that is why I believe so much in encouraging people to go for their dreams. And that is another element of why I do this podcast. So I talked about those 2 whys yesterday, which was conquering my fears and proving to myself that I can be consistent in a daily thing that's hard. But the third element of this podcast is me sharing what it's like to go for dreams in the hopes that maybe it might provide some encouragement or some inspiration, maybe some guidance to anybody else out there who's ever had a dream and has been afraid to go for it. And that is a very significant element of the Paul Green Comedy Podcast. So, anybody out there who has a dream, I encourage you to go for it. So, those of you who have been listening, know that I've also been breaking down the 48 laws of power, which, by the way, it feels like that was a huge right turn from what I was just talking about. For that reason, I think I'm not going to do that tonight because I'm already getting about 20 minutes in, which is about as long as I like to go for these podcasts. But I would like to end this episode with that belief that having a dream, having something in your heart that is calling to you, even if it seems unlikely or unreasonable, and you want to know what, maybe it is, and maybe it doesn't even happen, but that's not the important part. Because first of all, maybe it will happen. Maybe it will happen. But not pursuing it, to me, will lead to a life of regret. Let me put it this way. I remember about 3 months before I moved to LA, I was having a conversation with one of my managers at that company. And there had been some movement towards this idea of me moving to LA. And I remember during this conversation I had with him, I go, I don't know what's going to happen in LA. I don't know if I'm going to quote unquote make it. But I just think about myself as like a 70, 60, 70, 80-year-old man looking back on my life. And when I think of me being that age and looking back, would I rather say to myself, you want to know what? I went to LA, I gave it the old college try, it didn't work out, but hey, at least I tried. Or would I rather say, yeah, I didn't even try because I didn't think I would make it anyway and it just seemed too hard? Like, what would I rather, between those two scenarios, which one would I rather be able to say about myself as an 80-year-old man? And to me, it was so obvious. Of course, at that age, I am going to hope and wish that I had gone for it no matter what the outcome. And that is what I believe. Go for it anyway. So, that is all for today, my friends. I hope that you are going for your dreams. You're finding joy and fulfillment in the journey. If you need a little encouragement, you got it here. I believe in you. Give it a try. See what happens. All right, everybody. That is all for today, August 25th, 2024, episode 262 of the Paul Green Comedy Podcast. I love you all so much, and I will talk to you tomorrow.